To order. I think we've got everyone here. Welcome everyone. We have the minutes from August the 26th, which sounds really far away, but that was the last minutes because unfortunately we didn't have quorum for the meeting at the end of September. Are there any changes?
I move to approve the minutes from the August meeting.
I second the motion.
And then do I say
All those in favor?
those in favor?
Those opposed?
And you actually should say, the question's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes. I mean,
Okay.
and then you call for a vote.
The question to approve the minutes.
You don't have to, you did it. You did.
I was going to practice, Larry. I never get it right.
It's okay. It's new.
Correct me next time too, because I'll probably get it wrong again.
Is this done differently in the UK?
Yes, very.
Oh, okay, good.
This isn't done in the UK. Yeah, so it's very different, very different. Then we have announcements. So our next meeting is on November the 25th. And then Elizabeth, are there any other announcements that have come through?
No, not that I had.
Okay. Does anyone else have any announcements? Okay. And then we move on to our report and presentation. Julie, welcome. Do you know everyone here? Should we quickly go around?
Unmute. I think I do know everyone. I haven't met Bex though, so it's a pleasure to meet you.
It's good to meet you.
Can I make a interruption just for a second, Julie? Sorry about that.
Of course.
I just want to make sure that if we're talking about a Conservation Commission meeting on the Wednesday, the 25th, that's the day before Thanksgiving. And I don't know that there are a lot of people that I don't know what's happening this year, but it just seems like it's really stacked in there. And usually what we do is we combine a November-December meeting in order to accommodate both holidays. So I just wanted to know if we'd have a little discussion somewhere about that. It doesn't have to be now. Sorry, Julie. Just wanted to bring that up.
No, that's okay, Jim.
That's really helpful, James, because I didn't pick that up. And yeah, I'm on. I can accommodate either a different date or what do we do usually?
Are we going to talk about it now or at another time?
I would probably just quickly now just to get a view because we will need to decide at this meeting because it's the next meeting.
Okay, so I would just like to say that because we've already missed one meeting, our last meeting, I'd like to figure out how we can meet for November and December this year. That's my vote around our usual.
Okay.
I second that. That sounds good.
Maybe Elizabeth or Stu can suggest an alternate date for the for the Thanksgiving time.
Well,
Yeah. What about
We usually just move them up by a week.
just the week of the 17th would work?
Can we first see who can't make it? Because maybe we don't need to move it. I mean, we meet virtually, so you could virtually meet. I'm just saying less is more. If we can make it work as it is, let's do it. If not, let's change it.
I think we should move it 1 week
traveling.
earlier.
Yeah.
Sorry, what's that, Marnie?
I was just saying, I think we should do what we normally do is move both Christmas and Thanksgiving months up 1 week earlier to the 3rd Wednesday. I think we've always done
I agree
that.
with you, Marnie.
Okay.
Sounds like a motion to me.
Yes, I make a motion that we move them both up by 1 week.
I second that
Okay.
motion.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded to move both the November and the December meeting up by 1 week. All those in favor?
James says aye.
Aye. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So the next meeting will come around quick. So we'll get some good actions out of this one to do by the next one.
All right, thanks for that, Julie. Sorry to interrupt there.
No, that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that, James. Okay, so Julie, I'm Bex, and you know everyone else?
Yes, I do. And I got to meet Bridget earlier, last week, and I loaded her up with a bunch of information. So hopefully today you can see some pictures and it might make more sense. Okay. Okay, I think I'm gonna share my screen now, Elizabeth. Is that how we do this? Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
No?
Not yet.
Okay. Maybe it's, tell me when
You're
you can
coming.
see it.
There you go.
All right.
Yay.
So just bear with me. This is my first Zoom presentation.
So far, so good.
Hey, good. That's better.
There we go. Everyone see that and everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so I just like to start out a little bit with a reminder of where our system is, where our water comes from, and how we use our water. So what I'm going to talk about today is basically our supply, what happened this summer, what conservation activities we did over the summer, and what the master plan has in store for us in the future. So I'll go over basically those 3 topics. So first of all, just a reminder, where does our water come from? A lot of people think that it comes from here, and not that Immigrant Lake is a bad thing. It's just not where our water comes from. So actually, we have a source that looks like this. And this is up above Lithia Park, up in our watershed. And here's an idea of where the watershed is. You can see the map. It encompasses the whole area where when any water falls, any rain falls or snow falls in that area, it is funneled down into Reeder Reservoir via the Ashland Creek East and West Forks. And so you can see that little blue little reservoir there. That is our primary water source. And Mount Ashland is at the peak. It's the tallest mountain in our watershed. And it's a fairly good area that we're collecting water from. But that's what we use to fill up Reeder Reservoir. And if you haven't been up there yet, I strongly recommend it. I know right now is a difficult time, but it's a great thing to see. So here's another view of the reservoir. You can see the dam there. That's Hostler Dam. The reservoir holds about 280 million gallons of water, and that sounds like a lot, and it is. But really, we can only draw it down so far before it starts to get mucky, and we have algae issues, and we want to keep a certain amount in the reservoir in case there is a fire. So when we talk about it, we talk about only drawing it down to 35%. And that really gives us about 190 million gallons to work with during the year. So the east and west forks of Ashland Creek, usually, and I want to say normal with air quotes, normal years, not so normal anymore, but normal years, we had typically gotten flows into Reeder Reservoir of 15 to 18 million gallons a day. Well, in our limited years, like this year, and then you can see in 2014, 15, 18, 2020. So again, this might be the new norm that we're looking at. The flows got down quite a bit lower, 2 to 3 million gallons per day. And that's just not enough to sustain our community throughout the whole summer. And we really have a very minimal aquifer storage just based on the geology that's up there. But again, it's hard to quantify exactly how much water is held up in our watershed, but we have consistently had, even in those low years, at least 2 million gallons flowing in from the east and west forks. And I really think it's dependent on previous year's snowpack and what's recharging that aquifer per se. So our winter use is between 1.5 to 2 million gallons per day. Lot lower, that is totally manageable for all our indoor uses, all our domestic uses, showers, laundry, drinking, all of that. But then you see it goes up by quite a bit in the summer, between 5.5, 6 million gallons per day. Now, in the past, it had gone up to even higher than that, up to 7 million gallons per day. And our treatment plant capacity is only 7.5 million gallons. So we were hitting our capacity. And so over the years, we've really tried to bring that demand down so that we're not putting so much pressure onto our water treatment plant, and for a lot of other reasons. So when we have a year where we're thinking, okay, our primary source of Reeder Reservoir is not going to keep us going through the summer, we have to use a secondary source, and that's the TID water, and that comes to us from Howard and Hyatt and Howard Prairie Lake up in the mountains, and it's all comes to us by gravity. And we have a water right to treat 2 million gallons per day. And that's treated up at the drinking water plant. So it's pumped from Terrace Street up to the water treatment plant. And then it's treated to drinking water standards and then pumped back through the system. But this, again, is only available to us about May to mid-September, sometimes even less. And earlier in September, it gets shut off. So then our third water source, it's our emergency supply. And this tap line, it's Talent Ashland Phoenix Intertie, and it comes to us from Medford Water Commission, goes through Talent and Phoenix, and that's why it's called the Talent Ashland Phoenix Intertie. And this was completed, we had the pipe up to Talent, and in 2014, you know, when we've been noticing and having these lower limited water years, and we knew we needed to get another supply, a redundant supply and an emergency supply in case we have low water years like we've been having. So in 2014, we extended the pipeline from Talent to Ashland, and that goes up to the Granite Reservoir, which is in Lithia Park. It's the big tank that you see with all the moss around it where everyone's walking on the trails. And so tap water gets pumped to that reservoir tank. And we have a water right of about 2.13 million gallons per day. However, we only have so much space in our Granite Reservoir. So there are some system drawbacks that are keeping us right now from pumping that entire amount of water. So we're still pulling from the wet reservoir as we're pumping TID tap water. And it's already treated to drinking water standards. So at least we don't have to treat it again. So this is just a big kind of overview map of everything. You see where Howard Prairie, can you see Howard Prairie up here, Hyatt Lake? Here's the canal, the TID that comes into town. Now it looks like it goes to Croson Reservoir, but it actually is that's the Terrace pump station. And from there, it's pumped up to the water treatment plant here. And then from there, it's distributed back to all of the tanks that we have throughout town. Reeder Reservoir up here, so our primary source, secondary source, and then the tap line that comes in here from Medford and through Talent, and that goes right up to Granite Reservoir. So this is kind of a loaded question. What happened in 2020? So many things, but we'll just focus on the water portion. We started out the year with less snowpack over the winter and a quick melt in the spring. And we started to take steps, really just tried to, beef up our outreach to the community. I tried to get out there and do as many irrigation evaluations as I could. But just we were prepared and we knew that we were going to have a limited year. I update a page on the city website. It's right there /production. And so that lets everyone know in the city, everyone can go there and gives you information and data on our East and West Forks, how much water's coming into the reservoir, how much we're producing at the treatment plant, and how much water we're bringing in from tap. So it's a really interesting site if you want to check that out. So
Julie, can I ask a quick question for you? James.
Yeah.
The TID is pumped to supplement the water supply. Does that go to the reservoir itself or through just the station itself?
We'll never mix two sources, so it's gonna go to the treatment plant first.
Okay, good to know.
We
Okay,
wouldn't-
thanks.
Yeah, we won't mix two raw sources, so we would never take any water and put it into Reeder Reservoir that wasn't coming into Reeder Reservoir naturally.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Can I just double check? So that from the lakes, it's going along the TID to the treatment at the top of Terrace.
yes, exactly. So there's a pump station on Terrace, and from there it's piped all the way up to the treatment plant. And then
Okay.
treated.
Okay.
And
And
then
is
put in-
any taken from Immigrant Lake or not then? It's only from
No,
Howard Prairie and Hyatt.
Immigrant Lake actually feeds the east side of Ashland.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a canal that goes across through this area here. Then it eventually it crosses back over and comes through Talent, but Immigrant Lake, our TID bypasses Immigrant Lake completely. So our water doesn't go through Immigrant Lake ever.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So because we knew we were going to have a low water year, we started pumping TID as soon as we could in July. And we started supplementing, and we want to keep the reservoir as full as possible through the summer, because we know that in September and October are really the times when we're going to need that water because TID shuts off. So we want to keep the reservoir full for as long as possible. But the reservoir started drawing down in July, along with pumping TID. Our peak demand was on July 31st at 5.49 million gallons. And it's been fairly consistent with around 5.5 million gallons for the last several years. However, during the fire, it jumped up to, I think it was 5.86. So you can see how much water we ended up using for fire down by the treatment facility. So we stopped using TID on September 4th because we got a poor water quality test, and we did not want to serve that water to the community anymore, because as Hyatt and Howard are drawn down, it just the same as our reservoir, it gets really mucky and you get into that algae and much more poor water quality. And so we decided that we weren't going to use that anymore, and we were planning to start pumping on September 8th. We're going to pump the tap. And that was the day of the fire. So as you heard, the tap line got compromised because of the fire. So now we have no TID, we have no tap, and our reservoir has drawn down to 50%, which still sounds like a lot, but when I said earlier, we can only draw it down really safely to about 35, that doesn't give us much room. So with no rain in the forecast and then higher than normal water use, we implemented curtailment on September 14th. And then the tap line finally was back online by October 1st, but we were still having some pump station issues. So it wasn't at full capacity. And it's still not at full capacity because of the issues I mentioned with Granite Reservoir. By October 8th, the reservoir was down to 36%. And so we're all I was doing rain dances, anything that would bring on the rain, to give us a little bit of relief, because really it just seemed like one slap in the face after another around our area, especially after the fire. So we finally received some rain, and our reservoir has slowly begun to refill. Right now, it is, as of today, it's at 39.8%. So it is still going up. We're not drawing it down because we are using tap. And we were going to officially end curtailment today, but I think because of the warm weather that we're having right now, we're still going to continue to keep that going. Scott Fleury will and Adam will make that decision on when it's appropriate to end curtailment.
Julie,
And so yes, go ahead, Brian.
thank you. Your prior slide showed like the maximal use, I think, was either July 31st or August 31st at like 5.49.
Yeah.
What do the citizens, when they go into the curtailment mode, what do they decrease that to?
So in curtailment, well, if I'm understanding your question, so there's certain allocations for customers depending on are you residential, are you multifamily, are you commercial? And so there's an allocation that you're not supposed to exceed when we're in curtailment. And with the stage 1 curtailment, residential use was limited to 3,600 cubic feet per month, which is still a lot of water. And so we never did go into stage 2, but as of stage 1, it limits and requires that no one should be wasting water. You can't water during certain hours of the day. You should be only watering in the evening. And then that 3,600 cubic feet of allocation.
So I guess my question is, the peak demand was, I think, 5.49 million gallons per day.
Yeah.
And what did the community of Ashland drop down to when they were trying to conserve water?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. So for a while, it only dropped down to 4 million gallons and 3.98. And it was too high for a long time. And I think there are a few reasons for that. One, the fire was still fresh in everyone's mind. And I completely understand, when you hear curtailment and you're still thinking about the fire, maybe you're thinking, oh, I'll continue watering or I'll water more just in case. Also, because the TID got shut down, the folks who were using TID water to water their gardens and irrigate their lawns and whatever, they had to switch to city water to continue watering their landscapes. And so for a while there, it really didn't drop. And what we were asking people to do was get it down to between 2 and 3 million gallons per day, because that's where we typically are during October. It's pretty common to get down to 3 million gallons per day and then down to 2. So right now, as of today, we're at 2.53. So we'll still be going down as everyone's turning off their irrigation systems. The city will be using a lot less.
So Julie, on the same question about why, I mean, that was a good explanation you gave, but I noticed something beyond that. And I'm not trying to cast blame here. I think that because of the pandemic and because people have been functioning in a different way than they usually do in terms of how they get information, how much time they spend in their homes. I mean, I think one of the issues is people have been home during the day more. I think that does make people use more water.
Yes, well, we have had some, higher residential uses of water, but when we're looking at the wastewater treatment plant and what's coming into the system, it's consistently around 1.7 to 2 million gallons per day. So that right there is typically the indoor usage. That's not your irrigation use. And so when we see that, so really usage it's balanced, although more people are at home and more residential usage is happening versus
maybe less at businesses and more.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so related to that, so the next question I have is, because of the pandemic and because of the functioning of Ashland city government, I noticed, and maybe because I don't read any of the local papers every day, I rely on emails from the city and other internet news sources. And what I noticed was when the curtailment went into effect, I actually got a Nixle notice on my phone. And that was good because immediately I knew. And
I surprisingly did not get that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't realize it was even going out.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, so I got that, but that was pretty much it. And what I missed and what I recall from past years, and it's been a number of years since it seems to me since we had curtailment, there used to be a daily update in the newspaper. There used to be a sort of encouraging words put out there to remind people we're still in curtailment and here are some of the things you could do and this is why. And I feel like I think I didn't see people violating the curtailment in my neighborhood. Like I didn't see water on the streets or people
Mhm.
washing their cars, but normally I think people are pretty good about most of those things anyway.
Yeah.
What I did notice is everybody's automatic sprinkler systems were still going off at
Yeah.
full tilt. And
Yeah.
I think some of those, and you've provided guidance for city residents and how they could better manage that. But
Mhm.
I feel what was lacking and what was missing was a daily communication from city government. And that I wouldn't see that coming from you. I'd see that coming from like a public information person,
Mhm.
which my understanding is we don't have. But
No,
so that
we don't. And you know, there were decisions that were made, and you know, I did the best I could at the time to get the information out, but I hear what you're saying, and I agree.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Risa.
I just had a quick thought, Julie, and that is during curtailment, if there's a way, you know how you at a, you know, when you're trying to raise money and you have this little thing, you know, of trying to, now we're at $3,000. I wonder if the city had a simple little symbol that just kind of showed like how much we need to decrease our usage and where we are, if it was like on the city website, if we could get the tidings to punch it on, kind of like fire danger,
Oh,
you know, just not verbose, just to kind of like quick, anyway, that's all.
I do. I agree. And I do. I have heard the frustration about communication around this event. So, you know, I will pass that along to my supervisor, let them know what's being said, what the concerns have been from the community. So thank you.
Just so, you know, just a little thing.
I completely agree. You know, I really do. So, so this is just a slide about, you know, curtailment. Just as a reminder, curtailment is a very quick, short-term response, but conservation strategies are a much longer-term plan for reducing water use in a community. And so here's our main water conservation programs. And I know that a lot of you are familiar with all of these, so I'll just run through real quick. Irrigation, lawn replacement, smart controller, indoor water use evaluations. We have rebates. We also have giveaways that are very popular. And then our public outreach and a lot of resources for gray water education, rainwater catchment, and our WaterWise landscaping website. So on irrigation evaluations, it's great to do a catch can test. That's what this is called. It determines how water is being applied to the landscape and how quickly. But what I've really found is that where we get the most savings is just helping people understand how to work this irrigation controller. Because a lot of times they're set for multiple programs or multiple start times without knowing it. And folks end up using 2, 3, you know, even 5 times as much water as they should. And so really part of the irrigation evaluations is to go out and really just educate people on how to use their controllers. And we put together a schedule for them based on what type of sprinklers they have and what type of vegetation they have. And this is just a guide. This is based off of historic weather, what a lawn needs, and it gives you minutes based on how much, or based on what type of sprinklers you're using. And then it goes down here and you can cut that in half by depending on what you've got, shrubs or vegetables, you can reduce that amount of time. And this is what we will typically see before an evaluation and then after. And this was just helping someone understand how to use their controller.
Could I just, 1 second, Julie, I've got a couple of people on chat here. And I know we have to say what's being said because this is being recorded. There's Aliana, a reporter with the tidings. She's happy to facilitate with any public communication.
Yeah.
And then also James, he's tried to ask a question, but not acknowledged. James, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I figured it out. Somehow the muting was on the computer, even though I'm on the phone. So I think you can hear me now.
Okay, yeah.
The
did
question
you
I
have
had-
a question?
Yeah, Julie, I just wanted to know with TAP, when you go to TAP and start using that water, number one, does it cost more and how much more? And number two, are there limitations? Because if we're going on curtailment because we have low water in the reservoir and we can't use TID, why is it a big deal not to use TAP?
Well, no, and we were trying to get TAP on as soon as possible. But yes, it does cost more than the TID water. And we did have some limitations because first we had some trouble with the pump station. And then we have had issues with being able to pump at full capacity and fill Granite Reservoir. And we have, because the TAP can only go to Granite Reservoir. It can't go to any of the other reservoirs right now and fill them up. And we would never be able, we'd never be able to take tap water and put it into our reservoir. That couldn't happen.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so it's basically only going to the Granite Street Reservoir and not to the other reservoirs at
Yeah.
all.
And they've just
Okay.
put together a TAP master plan, and it has a lot more information on how the system is laid out and the improvements that need to be made. And so I encourage you to take a look at the master plan for the TAP.
Yeah,
Great,
Julie,
thank you.
is that TAP master plan on the city website now?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I wondered about that. I knew it was coming and I had.
Yeah, I know that it went to council, but I'm not sure
Oh,
if
really?
they had finalized it or not.
Yeah, it's too bad. That's something that is really of interest to, I think, most of us on this commission. And I've known that that master plan was coming from talking to Scott, but I never got anything. I thought I would have probably heard from Scott when
Yeah,
it was going to be published or presented to council.
yeah.
But that's it's a super important, and I would like to, after you're done with your thing, and when I make my comments about the water tour I have some comments on that.
Sure. I know it's such a complex system. And so that master plan should help clear up some questions that everyone's having about the system. And I do know that the tap line right now relies on, it goes through Talent first and fills Talent reservoirs and then comes to us. So I'm not as familiar as the engineers who are working on it, but we'll see if we can get you that plan as soon as
Well, I'll look forward to.
Hey folks, Stu here. The draft TAP plan is on the website. You can Google it.
Great.
It's under the Public Works Department. It's just the draft. Just
Thank you,
FYI.
Stu.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so then we have our lawn replacement program and our smart controller program. They were actually very popular this year. We've done a few more than we would normally have done. A lot of people are working in their yards this year. So we had more lawn replacement applications this year than we've had in the last couple of years. And then we also do our indoor fixtures and giveaways, which can add up to a lot of savings. So this is, and I apologize, I haven't been able to add everything up yet. Because first, the year's not over just yet, but I also have a bunch of information and data that I have not plugged in yet. So I imagine that we will be over 3 million gallons in water savings by the end of the year, based on what I have to still put into the system. But as you can see, we've still done really great with all of our rebates. People are participating, and I think we've done everything electronically, which has turned out to actually be a lot easier for processing and processing time, and then also for our customers. It's been a lot easier for them too. I have been getting out there and trying to do as many of those outdoor audits as possible. I'm happy with that 75, but I think it's going to go up to, as soon as I get all the info in there, it's going to go up to 90. So that has just been, everyone's been calling because everyone's doing work in their yards and on their irrigation systems this year. So this is some of the data that's in the water master plan. And you can see how water is used throughout our community depending on customer class. So single family is our biggest user, 43%, and then multifamily 14%. So between single family and multifamily, that's a big piece of the pie. I work with a lot of HOAs who have their own irrigation meters. And so I've spent several hours with many, have probably 12 HOAs maybe 15 that I've worked with this summer, and worked with them on their irrigation and on their controller. And so hopefully are getting that irrigation usage down a little bit. Our past gallon per capita per day for our community was 144. It has now decreased to 125 in the last decade, so that's great news. Our first goal of when our master plan was approved in 2012 was to have 5% reduction by 2020, with another up to 15% by 2030. Well, we've already met that 15% by 2020. So we have a new goal of another 15% reduction by 2030. So that's what I'm going to be working on. And because our outdoor water use is over 60% of our total water use, and you can't see that really in this graph, but water use outdoors, I mean, you've seen this. This is indoor demand. It stays pretty flat all through the year. You can see that, but you can see where we peak. This is our outdoor usage. And you see that little tip of that, it's actually, so this is an old graph, but I wanted to show it to you anyways, because our peak month for a long time historically had been basically the beginning of July. Well, that graph is starting to shift a little bit, and peak usage has been closer to the end of July and August. So I found that to be interesting because I think I'm seeing that this graph could be shifted just a little bit. So in the 2020, the Water Master Plan, there were some future programs that were outlined, and basically really to focus a lot more on outdoor, because that's where our peak usage is, and that's what we have to design our treatment plant to. So if we can get that peak usage down, maybe we can lower the capacity of the treatment plant. We are looking at continuing to do more irrigation evaluations, because that seems to be getting us a lot of savings, and also helping with leaks and leak detection. And not with tools, I just use my ears. And most of the time I can get it, and I really enjoy it. You know, only a few times do we have to bring in some leak detection companies. But we are also looking at a pressure valve rebate. It will help with future breaks in not only indoor but outdoor, because irrigation should not have high pressure. And in Ashland, we notoriously have high pressure. And so we were looking at that. Also efficient irrigation retrofits, like spray to drip. We started the smart controller rebate already. And like I said, we've been doing assistance with identifying leaks. And then again, just continue the education and outreach, because, you know, just because we said it last year doesn't mean we're done. We have to say it again this year. That's how this field works. And we have to continue to remind people and show them how they're using their water and the best ways to reduce and use it efficiently. Go ahead, Risa.
I'm surprised to not see rainwater catchment or laundry to landscape added as strategies for water conservation.
It was, and I'm sorry I left that out, but that was more resource oriented, more workshops, classes, but rebates were not included in that. That last slide was a lot of it's incentives, but like assistance with identifying leaks, again, that's outreach and resources. And then the more education and outreach encompasses the gray water and the rainwater catchment.
It's always, you know, in the 20 plus years that I've been collecting rainwater, like each passing day, the relevance and importance of trying to reduce how much water we pull from the city filtered water. It's, you know, it's an it's
important, and as climate shifts,
uncaught resource that would be great to get more people to participate in.
I know, I agree. And I hope to be able to build a bigger program around that in the future.
Julie?
And so based on, just have one more slide and then I'll take everyone's questions. So this is our maximum day demand projections. This is out of the current master plan. And you can see where the projections show us going without conservation and where it shows us going with conservation. And so this is my goal. This is what I'm working towards, is to keep us, really, I think my goal in my mind is to keep us at that 5.5 million gallons per day peak. I would like to see us be able to stay at that point and not have to go up to 6.5. And I think that our community could do it. So with that, I know you all have more questions, so hit me.
I've got one. It's Brian.
Okay, hi, Brian.
It looked like you showed a slide with people using water efficient shower heads, et cetera,
Yes.
that led to a savings of about 2.5 million gallons, which,
Yes.
so another way of looking at that is you're saving a day's worth of fall or winter usage, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, and then you showed a slide where it looks like most of the use is in those summer months of outdoor usage.
Yes.
And you only had, it looked like maybe 60 or 70 households who've gotten the equipment to make their houses more efficient. So how,
Yeah, the smart controller?
or different things, the shower heads, et cetera.
Yeah.
But so how, it seems like the money in terms of savings to meet the new goal of 20, 30, 15% reduction is going to be geared a lot towards outdoor use, right?
Yes, that's right.
So how are you going to get the citizens to do that?
That's a good question. So I'll tell you that the master plan and all the additional programs that were recommended, that was based on having 2 full-time water conservation FTEs. And we currently only have 1. And so that there's a limitation on how much I can take on myself, and how, best to run all these programs, and do it, because I do want to be all inclusive with everyone in our community and offer a program that works for everyone. Some people can't afford to redo their landscape, but they could potentially afford to replace their toilets, or I can give them free shower heads and aerators, things like that. So I try to spread out as many programs as possible, but at some point there is a limitation because I can only do so much.
Thanks.
So Julie, can you hear me?
Yes, I
Get
can.
unmuted. Okay. So a couple of things. I'm excited that there's the enhanced goal of another 15% by 2030.
Yes.
And I've tried to put across to council and public works in the past year that it would be really good if our conservation gains could be looked at as well as saving water as a water source.
Mm-hmm.
Because once we have this culture and experience in the community of using water saving strategies, this will go on into the future. And I was very frustrated when the city council approved a capital improvement plan that called for sizing our new water treatment plant with the assumption that there would be no conservation,
Mm-hmm.
no conservation supply. And I'm just putting that out there. It has nothing to do with you. This is a political question.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, and that will be thoroughly aired after we have a new council, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But that being the case, and with everything you presented, it seems, and here another political question is, oughtn't we be prioritizing that other FTE for water conservation? I'm just saying, I mean, that's not a decision for the Conservation Commission, but I mean, I think it looks to me like that would bring us more gains in water savings. And
Yeah, no, and I agree. And we did have that position for a while, and there were some budget cuts, and I think that
Mhm.
that position was one of them, unfortunately. And so, you know, we just trying to do the best we can with what we've got, and reach out to as many people as possible. But yeah, if we want to, you know, if we really wanted to move this farther, faster, obviously a second person would help get that done. But I just do what I can right now.
Julie, thank you. I found that presentation absolutely fascinating, piecing it all together. I speak to our landscape department here at Southern Oregon University to get
Yeah.
parts of it there. So just to see how it all works and fits together was really interesting. My question is, if there's anything, if you had a wish list in terms of what the Conservation and Climate Outreach Commission could do to help you, because I obviously completely recognize this is huge for one person, and yeah, organizations, we are facing budget cuts. What could we do to help you in terms of our outreach work?
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you, Bex. I would say that, like Risa was talking about, the gray water and the rainwater catchment. I think that if I had conservation or the commission's support, and I know that I already do, I have your support on that, but if you were able to help put together workshops and find the person who would be willing to teach the workshop, that would be extremely helpful. Same with rainwater catchment, because you know, it's not that we don't want to do a program. It's just, like I said, it just takes time. And so I think that rainwater catchment and gray water would be something great for the commission to work on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Risa.
Just really quick, I echo what Bex just said. I thought that the presentation was just, I mean, I know a lot of that stuff, but you just have put it together in a new way, you know. And so my question is it possible to take what you just did and make it available virtually on the city's website, so that people that, you know, are, you know, so it's easily accessible information for everybody, and then somehow in the city source, give a little link and just say, go there and get updated. It'll, you know, just edit out our voices and.
Yes, I think that's a great idea. And since all the COVID and everything has happened, I've been trying to think of new and creative ideas to get in to reaching out to the community. And I think that we may see more Zoom presentations just like this. And so I agree. And I think having it available on the website, like you said, with a link to it in the newsletter is perfect. It's a great idea.
Because you do it once, you know, and then you can go on and do other things.
Yeah,
people
and
call you up with questions.
Don't ask me that question. Just go online and you can.
Exactly. We have nothing to talk about. Go right to this website. Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to be sure, Julie, that you got that what Risa was saying was like literally to narrate the slideshow, you know, to recreate it the way you did it for us. She was saying you could just use this from the recording, but I think you could make a really nice recording on a PC, just narrate it through, save it, and get the powers that be to allow it to be posted.
Thank you. And I've been wanting to do that. And I really think that there's a lot of value to just having the community understand where our water comes from. Because, and you know, I've taken people up there and people who had no idea where the water comes from. And when they see it, when they actually understand where it's coming from and why it's so valuable, it completely changes the way they look at how they use water. And I feel like when I've taken people up there, they go, this is incredible. We should be doing everything we can to preserve this water. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted you to say. And so I think that having more information about how our water works, how it's treated, the whole process online for people to see is important. And I would love to be able to work on that going forward too. Risa?
I think James has a question.
I'm sorry, I can only see 4 people, so I'm not trying to.
Okay, I just
I think we
spoke. I'll be
have time
quiet.
for 2 more questions and then we're going to have to move on with the agenda because we've still got quite a lot to cover. So did you say James has a question, Stu?
I have a question.
Oh, I can't see everyone either. Okay, who has a question?
Marnie, I do.
Okay, go on, Marnie.
I just want to echo just the compliments on the presentation itself. It was so well put together and really well delivered, and I learned a ton. So thank you for doing
Thank you.
that. And yeah, just like what Risa was saying, it feels like we should know these things, and we do, but having it reminded this well every year seems important.
Mhm.
There's the graph towards the end that has the projections of with conservation and without conservation. That
Yep.
one. I would love to see another line on there that shows climate change, because that upper line is going to go up significantly just based on increased temperatures.
Yes.
And so that's going to cause your divide to be bigger and bigger over time. And
Mhm.
it's going to really put some pressure on those conservation measures and make them much harder than we think they're going to be. And
Yes, I agree.
current vegetation, but then also we're expecting shifts in vegetation. You know, I know a lot of the native vegetation in my neighborhood probably won't survive into the next 20 years. So, you know, how do we prepare for that? And then how do we prepare for those changes in vegetation in a way that allows us to meet our water goals down the line? So I think there's a lot that needs to go into kind of those projections out to the future.
I agree, and that's why part of the reason too is we really want to focus on those outdoor uses, because that's where we're going to need it with the longer summers, drier summers. We're going to need to focus a lot of our energy on outdoor programs and outdoor education, and that's why I wanted to also bring up that other graph this one here, showing you where the peak was back in 2012 and how that seems to be shifting now to later in the year is when we're seeing that peak. And so that, and that just shows, the difference in what's changing in our climate. And we, like you said, we need to be prepared for that too.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So I'm wondering, Bex, am I going to get a chance for 5 minutes or something on the report I did, or do I need to do it now? This is about the water system. It's sort of it's more of an update on Julie's description of the water supply system. Not hearing you. I'm not hearing Bex at all.
Sorry, I was going to say, yes, if you could do it now, but maybe a couple of minutes, because we still have quite a lengthy agenda, because obviously we didn't have the last meeting, so we're on a bit of a catch up at the moment. And then if we need further time, then we could add it in a future agenda. Could you cover it in a couple of minutes, Larry?
Yeah, I can do that. I'll do
Okay.
it right now.
I would do that.
So can people hear me? Okay, yeah, it looks like it. So there's some real issues that need to be addressed by Public Works and the City Council before we can actually move forward with any of the master plans, any of the capital plans. This is what I learned from the tour. I think you all got a written copy of my notes from it, but the highlights are, first of all, the tap turns out doesn't have a backup power source. So not only is it vulnerable to the pressures that we had from the fire situation, but if there were a power outage at this point, the tap doesn't operate. And that's a huge omission in the system. I did visit the water treatment plant, the main plant, the 7.5 million gallon per day plant that's below Reeder Reservoir that supplies our main water. And interestingly enough, what I gathered from that is that that plant could operate long into the future, that the biggest issue that needs to be addressed is safety for the workers there. And that's a subject for another time, but That was interesting to find out. There's nothing inherent in that plant that can't be remedied by some retrofit technology. And I think that the issue that Julie brought up in terms of being able to fully utilize the tap, because it only right now can pump to Granite Reservoir, I think that is addressed in the capital plans. And I think that that is going to be seen as a high priority to get those pipes and pump stations in so that we can make full use of the tap. And of course, first they have to get a power supply for the tap, which would be good because all our other pump stations, as far as I know, have backup power. The other thing, my last thing related to this is it turns out we can get potentially even more water from the tap. It's costly water, but it's also water that's already been treated. But there is the availability of more water right from the Rogue River system, which supplies the tap. And I think that seriously has to be looked into because having the fire happen simultaneous with our peak use during the summer really brought up the fact that we do not have a resilient system. And, you know, in terms of storage and pumping, we really need to address those things. I'm happy to talk to people about that another time as well. Bye.
It was really a perfect storm this year of circumstances, that's for sure. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Larry. And thank you very much for joining us, Julie. That was really good.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. You were terrific. That
No
was a great
problem. No problem. Elizabeth, are you still there? Do you just kick me out or how does this work?
Yeah, so if you want to watch the meeting, I'll make you back to attendee, but if you have to go, you can just leave.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I do have to go.
No problem.
Thank you,
Julie,
everybody.
Julie, before you go, I
Thank
typed
you.
you a question. Take a look at it before you leave, if you would. Thank you.
Mike Rush.
Can I interrupt real quick? Please don't use the chat anymore. I know we had a few technical difficulties, but like Beck said, it needs to be kind of read out and it's causing issues. So this is the last one.
Thank you, Jim. I can talk to you about that offline.
Okay. Okay, so we're moving on to council and staff update. Stephanie, should we start with you? Oh, you're on mute. Stephanie, you're on mute.
I would say at this point, the council is more in a state of waiting for the next council to occur. There's an emergency declaration still, and essentially Adam Hanks is really the person that is most involved with making day-to-day decisions. Scott Fleury was appointed as permanently for Public Works, so that is news. The city council has really been working on how the city manager position will actually be different than the city administrator position. And that took a fair amount of time at the last council meeting in terms of looking at kind of specific things like who appoints commissions, who appoints people to commissions. There probably will be a change in the office space in terms of moving the mayor's office into an office that's more generally for all of the council staff with more ability to have some space to talk with citizens and have some telephone or computer stations there. So that that was the last meeting. That was a large part of what was discussed. I think in the future, you know, people are kind of obviously waiting to see what holds with the election, and I'm imagining different candidates have some different priorities. So it'll be interesting to see which candidates the public ends up selecting in terms of the emphasis on climate action and probably budget for climate action realistically. That's my thoughts anyway about that, my personal thoughts. I think what the role of the city manager will be will create a difference in terms of looking at appointments to commissions being held by possibly people that the administration also feels are going to be helpful professionally to their commission, as opposed to looking at political appointments. That was certainly brought up at the last meeting. Right now, a lot of commissions are not meeting, and I don't think you're going to see. I don't even know that there's not a council meeting next week because of the election. So in essence, I think you're really looking at January, February to see any sort of start to look at hiring for the city manager position. And that would be one of the major things. It also looks like the other thing that happened is the David Shepard was named for fire chief for 3 years, with the idea that there'll be a transition with that position. And let's see, other things that occurred are probably looking at the fire department in terms of ambulance service, whether or not the city will continue that contract with the fire department, or they'll look at Mercy flights. I know that I'm going to be having a meeting with Sheila Clow, who's now the director there, to see how that operation would interface with us. And then there's also some discussion about District 5 fire and what that might be in terms of more coordination between that fire district and how that would interface with Ashland. Any other questions?
I've got just a quick one on the city manager. So do you think that there's any space between now and the beginning of next year for people from the community to be involved in that discussion that had been put out there? And it's been so hard to interface with the meetings. I think it's been hard for people, but is there going to be any opportunity for input from the community on how this city manager search and job description gets developed?
Good question. I know that would probably be Tina Gray that you're talking about in terms of, I know that that's something she's working on. I know that the public will be involved in the process of selection in terms of committees that will be involved. In terms of, there've already been some outreach to the community, I think, in terms of what people are wanting in terms of what they're looking for in terms of the specialties of that person, the conservation part of that. That's been a big point that's already been brought up. That somebody with a knowledge of that is important. You know, I have to say that from my personal point of view, things are going to get affected by the next election a lot. In terms of what different people are going to want to see that person be. There are some I think, some desire for diversity and looking at some people that have that would bring that diversity to the community. I think it'll be real important to hear from lots of parts of the city and not just the people that have the loudest voices. That's a personal comment.
Thanks, Stephanie. Risa, did you have a question? No, okay. Stu, for a staff update.
Heyo. I'll keep this very short, but I do want to take the occasion briefly to let Bridget say hello to everyone. Been working on getting somebody from the RARE program for a couple of years now, and at long last, we have Bridget to help us out for the next 9 or 10 months. And she's focusing quite specifically on outreach. Because similar to Julie, we simply do not have enough staff to get everything done. So it's really helpful to have Bridget here. I think, you know, one of the main things I wanted to report back to this group today is that we being the climate office, which is me and Bridget, are going to be getting the chance to sort of be guinea pigs for the new city website. The city is finally moving on from our current platform, which has been around for quite a while. And because we have Bridget available and because there's a high demand for climate information and because the opportunity is right, or the time is right, I should say, we're going to be trying to lead the charge there. And hopefully the climate plan will be one of the first new sets of web pages that goes up with the new site. We just had our first meeting with the developer today. I don't have a deadline of release or estimated time of release yet, but hopefully it won't take too long. So I guess that's one thing. You know, I definitely will be coming back to this group, Bridget and myself will, to get feedback on the first iteration of the website. We definitely want to hear what folks have to say. And in the meantime, if there are, I would call them critical features that you're looking to see, make sure to be in touch with me directly, not right now, simply for time. So I think, you know, working on the website is definitely something that this group will be interested in. More broadly, though, I'm interested in trying to activate this group to help spread awareness for existing policies and programs. You know, I don't think any single staff person at the city can get the word out about all programs sufficiently. So we really rely on citizens, word of mouth, neighbors to neighbors and commissions, as well as the newspapers and the website to get the word out about programs. And especially in a time of having some, you know, waiting before the new mayor and the new council come on board. If this group is able to grab existing programs and help spread the word about those, no doubt staff would be appreciative, at least I would be. One thing I would note on that account is that I'm trying to launch right now 2 new incentives, one for electric vehicles, one for electric bikes. They're going to be pretty nice programs, and I'm just drafting them up right now. They were supposed to go live in mid-September, but on account of the fires, everything's been pushed back a bit. Nonetheless, I am eager to have those programs live as soon as possible. And so once they are live, hopefully before the next meeting of this group, I'll make sure to let everyone know. And if you can help spread the word, that would be wonderful. I don't know if I want to take up more time since we're already a little bit behind, but I'd encourage you all to reach out to Bridget and myself if you have questions about what's going on. Thanks.
Thanks, Stu. Are there any questions for Stu? Okay, that's a very nice segue in terms of promoting those programs, and maybe that's something we can do through our writing and communication we do on the sneak preview. So next on the agenda, we move on to old business, and it's a decision for the monthly column on the sneak preview and also articles for the next meeting. So we've got 2 articles here at the moment, and then a discussion on who could write future articles. So even from the meeting so far around water conservation and then spreading awareness about programs, I mean, these are some great ideas that we should be looking at. So are there any comments on the 2 articles that were there? One on the update on Road to Go and the other on the conservation tips. Go on, Risa.
Well, obviously, I don't have anything to say about Road to Go because I wrote that, but the tips that Jamie wrote, she had let me know she wasn't going to be able to be at the meeting, and my response to her about her article is that it was fine, except it was more an advertisement than a communication to the readership. And I asked her if she could just take all the bells and whistles out, because Curtis wouldn't print it anyway. And I didn't hear back from her. So my guess is going to be that the Road to Go should probably be next in line. I'll reach out to her and get her to modify what she wrote so that it could go in the sneak. And then just to follow up what you said, Bex, I was thinking the same thing about the possibility of Julie writing an article synthesizing what she shared with us today and having a link that she could communicate in the sneak about her presentation, for one thing. And then the other, we could do an article, rah for the updated charging station on Pioneer, and fold in the programs that Stu was talking about with the cars and with the bikes. And I'm just cramming all this in because it's so weird to talk. So that's why now I'm done.
I think that's a great idea. So I think where we are with Jamie not being here today for our next article, what's the deadline for Curtis, Risa? It's due on November the 17th. According on the agenda, it's due on November the 17th. So if there's no comments on update on Road to Go, is the commission happy with this article going to Curtis? Brian?
Can I just ask, Risa, is everybody still participating during the pandemic 100%?
Actually, we did have 5 participants, and today we have 8 participants. 2 of them are in Medford, and there's 1 more coming online. COVID and Road to Go actually make a good team with all the specifications that the health department has. It's actually very compatible.
Thanks.
Do we need a motion to approve an article?
Yes.
Okay, so I motion that we, our next article in sneak preview is the update on Road to Go.
I'll move that we do that.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And are you happy following up with Jamie, Risa?
Yes, I actually followed up with her once, and now I'm basically, unless you all have other input about the article, I'm just going to reiterate what you all, what I just shared about the article. Just need, the content is fine, the presentation just needs to be more,
I think it needs to be more chatty with the community to empower them what they can do about waste rather than an advert. I agree with your thoughts, Risa.
so can the commission approve hers with the changes that we talked about? If y'all agree to do that, then that will just
Keep it
Just-
moving.
just to share with y'all. I mean, it's very challenging getting articles in the queue at the right time. And so I would love, it's kind of insurance for me to know that December and January are covered.
Mhm.
So that's,
Bonnie?
I'm just going to add that the next meeting is a whole week earlier, so it will give us an extra week if we wanted to review it and vote on it next time. I'm okay either way, but I just wanted to remind us that we
yeah,
will.
thanks for that.
Okay. So should we'll vote on Jamie's article at the next meeting, which is only 3 weeks away, but could we look at having 2 more at the next meeting as well? Did everyone support the idea we could have 1 on water conservation and 1 on promoting Stu's policy and programs from the city of Ashland, and having that written by someone from the commission to have that discussion with the community? Are there any I could ask or go back to Julie, Stu, or would you be able to ask Julie to write that one? A short
I
one?
can ask her
Okay,
if you, I'm happy to do that so Stu doesn't.
okay. And then the other one is there a volunteer to write about the programs that we could promote?
Happy to help write that one.
Brilliant. Marty, that would be brilliant.
Okay, this is James. I keep getting muted by somebody, so I've been trying to enter in, but I keep getting muted. When I get a chance, I'd like to offer also something that was on the list for quite a while and kept getting put off, which was a joint CCOC and Climate Policy Commission sneak preview article.
James, if you want to do that, I'd suggest, finding a partner in that commission and coming up with an idea and coming back to this group to pitch it, either written or not yet written.
Okay, I'll do that.
sounds good.
Find a co-sponsor.
I wasn't aware that was on the list, James. And I wonder what we would write jointly with them at this stage. It would be good to have a topic of focus if we did go down that route. We're not actually at the moment functioning in a way that we are working with them.
The idea was to, as I recall, was to take both commissions and describe what our roles are, how they're different, how they potentially overlap. It's a public information kind of thing.
Okay.
And so more than anything.
No, I see what you're saying. I would also say we're in a complete state of change at the moment, going through an election, and it's pretty much up in the air where we're at. So I don't know if it will be the most timely thing because it could be outdated quite quickly.
I think it's a great idea that would be it, to have it as a goal in 2021 at some point as things coalesce and
Mm.
we actually have something to report, that would seem great.
I know, it'd be really great if we had a list of achievements as well as our purpose. I like the idea.
Just know also that if there's two commissions listed as authors, that it'll have to be, ratified by both commissions as a communication. So you'll need somebody to shepherd it through that other group as well.
Okay, thanks, Drew. Risa?
I just need clarification on sneak preview, just so I understand. Rogue to Go is for November. Jamie is for December. And then we're looking at the possibility of the one that Marnie and Stu would do on electrification. That would that be November? Would that be January?
Sorry, go on, Elizabeth.
So it's actually gonna be pushed. I'll push back a month because November is out to print. So Rogue to Go will be in December. Conservation can be in
thank
January.
you.
Yeah. But other than that, it sounds good.
Okay, see that's I need help sometimes. Okay, so I'm a month off. So then, so Jamie would be the first article for 2021, and then would it be, it seems like winter makes more sense for electrification and moving closer to spring makes more sense for water. So I'm asking Marnie and Stu if the February issue, meaning it would be due in January, set, or maybe before.
It would be good to have a couple in the pipeline. So if we always had two in the pipeline. So
Yes, so it would be due January, it would go out February.
Okay.
And then the water one would go out in March, which is kind of perfect.
when you
if
say
y'all are-
due January, go out in February, not due at this commission, due with the sneak preview in January. So it would need to come to this commission in December.
Holy cow, see, that's why I get so confused.
Mm. We need
Okay,
to bring everything back a month. That's why I think we need to start getting a couple of things.
I agree, thank you.
Yeah.
Marnie, does that work?
Yeah, that works.
Okay,
I'll work with Stu and we'll get it into by the December meeting.
and I'll reach out to Julie. Thank you.
I would be happy to do a water conservation one with Julie maybe, but I think it would be better probably in late spring.
Well, there will be a month for you, Brian. Maybe in the summer, actually, if we have one that comes out in March, it'd be great to hit water again in
Yeah.
the summer. Does that make sense? So I'm just going to put as a possibility your article.
And I would be happy to be involved in a second article. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense to have two water articles and that sort of mesh with each other. And I'm happy to work on a later one.
I
I'll
like,
work on it with Brian.
yeah, I like that idea too, Larry, because just having what Julie's told us today as a narrative for the first one is a really nice story to tell on how it works.
Great. Thank
So
you.
Brian, we can work on something together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And then I had one, looking at this agenda, I had one about lessons from the pandemic. So I think this was, yeah, because I'd written an article for SOU, but this was back in May on COVID sustainability and SOU. So I was going to revisit this and see if there was something more that I could pull from it for the community, for the audience of the sneak preview. So I can do that as well. And again, something I can make it so it's not outdated. Well, the pandemic is still going on, but not outdated. So it's just something we can think about in terms of, I think it was about the connection side of things. So I can think about that as well.
So that would be a possibility for April, which we can visit another time. That's great.
Do you think is this, I don't know if it's in our role really, but the sneak preview, I think, has a history of being regular and read by a lot of people. And I'm wondering if maybe to follow up lessons from the pandemic, if there would be one like lessons from the fire. I don't know if that's kind of in our purview, but it would seem to me to be as much as the pandemic would be.
If there's a sustainability angle, I wouldn't feel I have views, but I wouldn't feel I'm qualified to write on that. I feel other, there would be other people in the community far more qualified. I don't know, unless anyone else feels they could write something from that side on wildfires. And
There's very qualified people in the city that are, you know, they're the fire experts, you know, with that. So I would think that they would be more astute at it than we would.
But we have the venue on a regular basis. I mean, would it make sense to have one of us work with somebody, like there's a guy named Brian who
I
does,
met with him yesterday.
yeah, who does the weed abatement, and he's coming to my house to do a fire risk assessment tomorrow. And would it be worthwhile? I mean, I could even ask him about working on a joint article to come out late spring next year.
Maybe you folks can think about it and regroup at the next meeting.
Yeah. That's a good idea. Thanks, Stu. Risa?
So I had a request when we were talking about the sneak preview. I know that we have a lot of other things we need to do, but with the effort that it takes for every article that we write, I wanted to do a brainstorm with the commission and come up with at least 4 or 5 places where each article could go besides just in the sneak. If there are some places that we could send each article and they would want to add it to their newsletter or their website. I just feel like that just multiplies our effort and our outreach. And
I completely agree, Risa. Could we add that on the agenda at the next meeting, Elizabeth? Because, and it's not necessarily just that article, but maximize our communication channels in terms of all our outreach, because that is our role here. Yeah, in terms of the communication. I don't think we have time to think about all the channels at this meeting though, because I was, I think, yeah, is that enough for the sneak preview for now?
it's beautiful.
Okay, so the other thing to discuss was, so two meetings ago, we discussed all the different projects that we could focus on linked to the Climate Energy Action Plan, and what we could focus on as a commission, what projects we do. So one of the main projects that Risa's been a champion of is Rogue to Go, that is now running outside of this commission. So there's other things. What should we be pushing in the community in terms of outreach, supporting other commissions, not just the Climate Policy Commission? This is about outreach across the board on conservation and climate. So we had a discussion around SEEP. We all put forward discussed ideas, and then the action was to email them to me so I could collate them. So that was in the package that Elizabeth sent out, were 6 projects that I received. Unfortunately, I didn't receive emails on a lot of the projects put forward, so they're not in the final list here to discuss. So I think I don't know, we can look at that more closely. Are there projects here where we should be focusing? And the idea was that rather than spreading ourselves thinly, to come together, come behind a couple of projects and work together on these to actually define them. What's the outcome? What are we trying to do? Is it a promotion, awareness? Is it input from the community on policy that we can then take to policy commissions? What are we trying to do around each of these issues to support other organizations, other commissions, the city council across the board, and take a more integrated approach to what we're doing. So I don't know if everyone's had a chance to read the projects that got put forward, and if there's any strong ideas for ones that we would like to prioritize. Risa.
Can you read us the ones that you received?
Yeah, so they are, there are 6 projects, and one is single-use items. So I guess this is building on Rogue to Go, but to revisit previous efforts through the lens of COVID-19 and the fires, and develop a strategy umbrella for all avenues to reduce single-use items in Ashland. Have that package of alternatives, develop an ordinance, which has been developed in many other Oregon cities further afield across the world, and develop that framework strategy. Working with other organizations that are pushing the biking and cycling infrastructure in Ashland. We have a very high accident rate compared to other cities in Oregon in terms of our cycling infrastructure within the town. And then you also have an opportunity here in terms of outdoor recreation and diversification around the economy. And that also links to the service industry, bringing tourism in. The other one was climate change resilience. So what we've seen in COVID-19 and wildfires is significant impacts on our community linked to climate change. And is there anything we could do to support other organizations in terms of outreach and other parts of the council around climate change resilience to raise awareness here? The other one that there would be to present seek and raise awareness around climate change mitigation and adaptation to all commissions. This is possibly on hold where we are at the moment, with some not meeting and with the election. Water conservation, and then another one to look at pre and post-consumer compost services within the city of Ashland. And they're the 6. So previously we've had subcommittees focusing on some of these. It might be that we need a subcommittee, or it might be we just take it and carve out a project with a task and finish group looking at it. But coming together and working collaboratively, working out who else we need to work within the community and get behind certain projects. Just seeing if there's any inspiration here to.
I have a question about process. Sorry to bring up process, but I think that if we're really trying to find direction and agenda for a long period of time, or strategize, or whatever we might be doing, I just feel like our regular meeting format is not the greatest venue for it. And obviously we're in a pandemic, we're meeting virtually, but maybe we could have, it's probably, this in the way that the city council has work sessions, it would be great if even soon, maybe, there's just a suggestion, I'm not attached, but it just seems if we just had a 1-hour session where we were meeting to brainstorm and plan what our projects would be and how we would go about doing them, might be helpful.
I do feel that was the start of it 2 meetings ago, Larry, when the action was for everyone to read revitalize downtown Ashland, think about the economic rebuild behind COVID-19, and also to read the Climate Energy Action Plan, and for everyone to come to that meeting with 3 items that we could then brainstorm and pull together. It was then, as a result of that meeting, because they are short meetings, we don't have time to write up everything. The action was for everyone then to take those ideas that we'd all discussed, the ones that they put forward, so that we could collate them here and then discuss and vote on them. I do feel our time, I agree, our time is shortened here in the meeting, but the collation of what we initially discussed that everyone was behind, aligned with SEEP and the economic rebuild, is these six items. I know that things will change. We're going through an election, but that was, in terms of the process that we had, yeah, I felt that process had kicked off a couple of meetings ago. I do feel, and I guess this is something else we need to look at, like the action was for everyone to email all the ideas they had or any other ideas, so that we would have a full sort of list here to align with SEEP, and it was to email them in, showing how they aligned with SEEP, how they aligned with Revitalize Action, so we could get behind them. I didn't receive any emails. I received 2 from 2 people. So at the same time, we don't have the full list of all the ideas that were discussed 2 meetings ago, but I didn't have all the ideas from the 2 meetings ago. So there is a weakness in our plan to bring it together and to have a strategy there. And I don't know if we want to go back and look at this more closely again and work out what we can get behind. I would rather we all feel inspired by a project that we really want to get behind and make a difference in Ashland. I think that would be incredible, that we can actually move something forward and make a change that way. But we need more than just, yeah, I completely agree with you, Larry. It's not conducive just to have a meeting every month where it's a 2-hour discussion and some of that is allotted to this. We need much more than that. We need people participating in between meetings, meeting in between meetings, doing outreach work, coming with enthusiasm. I think it's a privilege to sit on a commission like this and represent everyone. We need, yeah, we do need to put in more time and accountability. I was talking about it with other contacts I have that sit on other commissions, in terms of how they felt, what their role was about and the time they're putting in. And I do think we need to visit that, because otherwise we're gonna talk about what we could do and we're not necessarily going to make a difference. And this world city is calling out for a difference right now. So I really think, yeah, we need to decide what we're going to get behind and do something. So thank you for that, Larry. It's a very good point. We need to.
So Bex, is your intention that we look at these 6 options and see if there are 1 or 2 or 3 of them that we want to step forward on creating what's next?
Yeah.
So, if we could come up with something, then in between this meeting and the next meeting, we could have had a meeting with the other interested people and bring back the information, and then that action that you are speaking of will have begun.
Yeah, it would be great to have a mini action plan. What are we trying to achieve around it? Just listening on the water conservation, very timely having Julie here, because that's a complete education for me as well. And so that was one reason for my question to Julie: how can we help you? And then so she's, you know, made a call out for help there. And so if we had a little water conservation mini action plan of what we could get behind, and who was involved from this commission, in terms of outreach, in terms of actions, in terms of any pilot projects, workshops, that would be great. The same, an area that I'm completely passionate about in terms of single-use items, to see what else we can do in terms of building on Road to Go, and also, of course, making sure that we can do it aligned with requirements that we're seeing through the CDC on COVID-19. And then I always look at Marnie when I talk about climate change resilience and having that expertise on the commission. What more can we do to help this community and reach out to others so people are more climate aware and realizing that some of these impacts we're seeing are a direct result of climate change. So yeah, I think that's a good idea, Risa, forming little groups and maybe coming back with something we could do around each of these that were put forward.
Well, can we get some clarity on, in the past, before you were with us, Bex, we had subcommittees that met, but we had to give notice and et cetera, et cetera. If we have an action group that's 2 or 3 people, is that legal staff?
I think that's a question for Stu and Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but here's what's happened at the Climate Policy Commission. There's not staff capacity to notice and run meetings for subcommittees for the foreseeable future. So every project is going to have an individual lead, and that lead can communicate with a non-quorum number of people in their commission, preferably asynchronously, meaning email or one-on-one meetings rather than group meetings. But we definitely cannot cross the line of having quorum, because if you then deliver a policy to council and somebody doesn't like it and they find out there was improper meetings, then that can be enough to set things back significantly. So projects can continue. I think the key thing for me is that we have good written records and that there be an individual project lead for everything. That way there's some accountability about where things stand and who's organizing the process. Does that make sense?
That's really helpful. One question, Stu, what would be, so we're not at quorum, what does that mean?
Well, so 4 or less.
Okay.
I'm guessing I said that right because Elizabeth didn't chime in, so. And I guess one other just sort of side comment. I'd encourage you to pick 1 or 2 things to start and not spread yourself too thin. This commission has historically done a pretty good job of generating articles and doing other smallish events, but I really want to help explore other ways that we can grow this outreach with this group, but also I don't want to create something unsustainable, and perhaps one way to go about this would be to facilitate Zoom calls on particular topics that are of interest, like say the water system, and invite Julie to do a training for the community. I don't want to volunteer her, but since we just covered that and it was requested, maybe that's a good way to do it. Sort of a little mini, keep them super short, easy to produce, but this group could work in collaboration with staff to produce mini topics that then could be recorded and put out, kind of like a video version of the articles that we're doing. But I also want to be sensitive to the fact that each of us has things that we would like to see, and we really want to focus on things that the bulk of the community is going to be able to access and leverage and make use of. That's all. Thanks.
That's really helpful, Stu, and yeah, a useful reminder that how we can help the community the most here. So are there any ideas? Risa, you had your hand up.
Well, I'm just wondering, we just have like 10 minutes. If we can go through the list of 6 and just go through each one and just see if we have people that want, 2 or more, but not more than 4 for each of these. I can tell you that the compost one is a quick, this is not something that's going to take a lot of time. It's going to be a quickly accomplished goal. And so I feel comfortable, you know, raising my hand for water conservation and the single-use one.
And I'd like to be involved in the water conservation for sure.
If I had to prioritize two of them, it would be single use and water conservation.
I would prioritize the climate resilience one, but I'm totally happy to work on any of them.
Brian, have you got any, do you prioritize there?
Well, having been on SEEP, I would be interested in the climate change resilience one. And just as a personal interest, I'd be interested in the biking one, but I don't know if that shouldn't also, you know, if the Transportation Commission shouldn't be involved in that also.
Mm-hmm. Okay. James, there's three of you now, James, on my screen. Are any of your audios working, James? No. I don't know, James might be able to hear us.
Oh, there's all kinds of mutes going on here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay, so I have no idea what is going on with my Zoom. I've reloaded it several times to try and resolve this. All right, so if I recall correctly, one of the recommendations I made during that time where we had ideas of what we might do was to have a little bit more of a liaisonship between the two commissions. And even though I recommended a sneak preview article several months ago before COVID hit, it seemed to be able to reach light of day during our conversations then. Since then, it's been pushed back. And so I don't know about climate resilience is probably the one that I'd move toward, but when it comes down to it, I'd also like to be able to work on a relationship between the two commissions. And Stu, I don't know if that's even appropriate at this point. So if I can't do the one which is kind of working on the relationships between the two commissions, I would just as soon go with climate resilience.
Thanks, James. So the ones that are standing out there for me are climate resilience, water conservation, and single use. Does anyone have any comments on that?
I'm a little confused. Is the goal to hit all six? Okay. Okay, so at the moment, we have more than one person for single use, one person for the biking, two people for climate, nothing for SEEP, two people for water, and one person for compost, but I would drag Jamie in with me.
Okay, so I don't know if we've quite worked out who's working on what, and I think that maybe we have to have that discussion in a bit more detail at the next meeting rather than rush through it now, so everyone's comfortable with what role they have and their involvement, and maybe we could discuss this more at the next meeting, which is only 3 weeks away, thanks to the suggestion. So what we could do is take those three priorities and have that as the bulk of our discussion at the next meeting, because I'd be really keen that everyone's very comfortable with their role and we have goals for each one that the commission's behind. What does everyone think of that idea?
I think goals are good.
So go ahead, Marnie.
I was just going to say, just looking at the climate resilience one, I would definitely want to change how it's worded compared to how it is here. Is that something that we can do in the meantime? Can I send some suggestions, or is it something we want to do as a group?
I would love, send it through to me, Marnie, because then we can send that out in the package so that everyone's seen it before.
Okay,
That's great. If you send it through, I'll collate how it's worded, definitely. The
okay,
more we have to discuss at the next meeting, the better. And then we can all look at which ones that we have time to work on between the meetings. Yeah. Okay.
Quick
Stu-
add-on to that, I'm looking at the calendar, and in order to give Elizabeth a couple days to do the packet, everyone will have to submit their stuff by November 9, which is a week from Monday.
Wow.
So there's not a lot of time.
See, that's,
Um,
yeah, no, that's literally everyone just have any comments on the 3 that we've prioritized and just send me a paragraph or something of what you think it should cover, and I can summarize this for Elizabeth. Yeah.
So Bex, you're hoping to get feedback from people basically next week, right?
Yes, by midweek. I would go to give me Thursday to do it because I'm not on the computer on Friday because I'm on furlough.
Would it be possible for us to get a written summing up of this, of what, what you're asking us in an email? I know there's been, seems like we have to do the emails through Elizabeth. Is that true? Or if it's to the whole group? Because, I mean, I'd like to at least see a list of who's doing what. And maybe I'd be interested in joining up with another one, but I'm not ready now to commit.
No, that's why I was saying let's discuss it at the next meeting. But Marnie wanted to reword the way climate change resilience is, which I completely welcome because Marnie is the expert here in terms of what I pulled together, because that was one that I put forward. So this isn't about committing to any or reshaping it final. This is making sure we just have the 3 for a more detailed discussion at the next meeting.
Just a minute.
And I really like the idea of what you said earlier, Stu, that even if we end up with just 1 or 2 things in each area that we really focus on, I think that's that's where our focus should be.
Yeah, I might even take it one step further and say, like, what are you hoping to accomplish in whichever topic area in the next 6 months?
Yeah,
Like,
I like that. Okay.
Things will take as much time as we give ourselves. So,
Okay. No, that would be a great discussion at the next meeting. Okay, so we have four minutes, and I had any other business because the other commissions have asked us to get involved in a 20 speed limit. But actually, we can cover that at the next meeting now too, Elizabeth, because we've got it a week earlier. Yeah. So there was new business, bag ban, ordinance updates, and then we have a wrap up. Is this for you, Stu?
That's actually a memo from Adam, but I think I can summarize it pretty succinctly by saying the bag ban's not being enforced right now based on guidance from the state because of COVID. And prior to that, there were some issues which we do not have time to discuss at this moment. But the status today is it's not being enforced.
Okay. And then we have items.
And there's that memo which people can read if they haven't already read it.
Risa.
Just a quick note that shopping cart, actually, if you bring your own bag, they will still give you a nickel. And I think they're the only folks the only business that's doing that.
Thank you. And then the other items, the future agenda. Sorry, Elizabeth, that was all a bit rushed at the end. I hope you got the ideas for the next agenda. Okay. Is there anything? Oops, Stu.
My last thing is I think I can volunteer Bridget and myself to show you whatever we may have of the website at the next meeting.
That would be brilliant.
Which, could take a lot of time or just a few minutes, depending on how much you want to devote to that topic.
Okay.
We can sort
as
it
long
out.
as we can look at that, Stu, but as long as there's time to discuss like our projects as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the past, Stu, you shared links with us when you had some new material for your web pages. And maybe it would be great and it would save time at the meeting if you have something that we could take a look at that's a link in our agenda or something before the meeting.
Yeah, if I have it, I will send it early. I can't commit to that right now since we don't even have logins to the system yet, but I will hope to give you something to look at.
Okay, thank you. Look at that, 4:59. Anything else? Thank you everyone for attending. I'm sorry it was a bit rushed in parts. Elizabeth?
Real quick, just a reminder, next meeting, we will review the annual report. So if you guys have ideas of, I know this year's been cut short, I'll have the report from last year to review and kind of update from that. So just be thinking of that.
Brilliant, thank you.
I just have a question. Elizabeth, is that for, when you say annual report, is that for our preparation for what we'll communicate to council for our annual report? Is that what that is?
Yes, you will present to council on December 15th.
Oh, good information.
Thank you. Okay, everyone have a lovely evening. It's nice to see you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.